Welcome to the Chronicles of a Cheating Wife channel. A new story every day. Don't forget to subscribe. A single plate on the table. That's all I remember when it started. The clink of porcelain in a silent kitchen. The daylight pouring in from the window, illuminating dust motes in the air. My chair was pushed back, far enough that I felt I was watching someone else's life. My pulse hammered in my ears. I should have been hungry, but my stomach was in knots. I couldn't eat. I just stared at that lonely plate, at the smudge of leftover sauce on its rim, and tried to breathe. My name is Michael Reed. I am, or maybe was, a husband. And that Monday morning, everything in my life shifted. The night before, I had come up with the plan. I promised myself it was just a test. I'd pay him $1,000 up front. If it worked, if he could actually make her respond, there'd be another two waiting. I had found him at the restaurant, serving tables, that confident grin and smooth talk. I recognized in him a certain kind of hunger, the desire to please, the readiness to do anything for some quick cash. He fit all my requirements. I thought I'd seen it all coming, that I could handle every outcome. But I was not prepared for the emotions slamming through me, the panic churning in my gut. That plate on the table was like a pale moon in broad daylight, completely out of place. It made me realize that no matter how carefully I'd planned, I was losing control. My breathing got faster. My hands started shaking on the edge of the table. I had to stand up, but my knees felt weak. I closed my eyes. I forced myself to count to 10. Slowly, I brought my mind to order. This was just a test. I wanted to confirm if my wife, Catherine, my precious Kate, was still mine, if she loved me, or if she was hungry for something else. In the silence, I heard echoes of the conversation I'd had with him just 2 weeks prior. His name was Daniel Wright, but he insisted I call him Danny. He'd laughed when I told him what I wanted. "Are you serious?" he'd asked, leaning closer, that flamboyant smile flickering across his face. "You want me to hit on your wife?" I nodded. Even in that moment, I felt my tongue heavy. 1,000 now, 2,000 more if you get her. You know, to want you, I'd said. I had forced my voice to stay calm, which was nearly impossible because shame and anger twisted inside me even then. "But it has to be real," I added. "No over-the-top lines. Just be yourself, ease her into it." He stared at me for a solid 5 seconds, then shrugged. "I've done worse for less," he said. "All right, man. Deal." His grin was an insult and a relief at once. I gave him the envelope full of cash, and I watched him tuck it inside his jacket pocket like it was pocket change. Now, standing in my own kitchen, staring at that single plate, I realized just how badly I had miscalculated. I never imagined the knots in my chest, the nightmares that would start plaguing me as soon as I got him involved. But it was too late for second-guessing. She had to fail or pass, and I had to see it with my own eyes. That was the only way I could finally put my doubts to rest. I tried not to think about the times I'd see her phone screen light up at night, or how she'd become more guarded about her messages. The cool distance in her eyes when I reached for her in bed. My memory was riddled with tiny, stinging details, like the faint fragrance on her scarf that wasn't hers, or the late-night phone calls she claimed were from clients. Everything had gnawed at me for months, feeding my jealousy, my insecurities. But as I cleaned that plate, my hands trembling under the water's flow, I repeated to myself the only mantra I had. I need to know. I need to see. After a few minutes, my breathing evened out. The panic receded into a cold knot at the pit of my stomach. I turned off the faucet, dried my hands, and reminded myself that knowledge is power. That was the final rational push I needed to keep going. When the first signs came, text messages she accidentally left open on her laptop, I realized he was following instructions. He was playing the sweet talker, the friend who listened to her design ideas. They exchanged inside jokes about clients, about silly stuff like the perfect color palette for a calm living room. She seemed intrigued. I told myself it was harmless. Just text. But the next day, it was about flowers. He left a bouquet at her office with a note. "You deserve something beautiful." She brought it home with a sly smile on her lips. I pretended I didn't notice. She put the flowers in a vase. She hummed as she arranged them, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek so I wouldn't say anything. I forced an indifferent expression, flipping through paperwork I'd brought home, though my heart was racing. Then came the phone calls. I never heard what they said. She would step outside or linger in the bedroom. Door cracked just slightly, but I heard her laughter, light and bright. I heard her say, "Dan it, Danny," with a playful tone that made my skin crawl. The messages escalated. Nothing obscene, just a slow burn, a careful approach. He was good, too good. I felt my chest tighten every time I peeked into her phone or read those cunning lines. "Thinking about you. Wish I could see you. Count the hours." She was responding. She told him about her day, her frustrations with me. The carefully placed words were knives in my gut, one after another. I was the one who'd hired him, and yet I felt the betrayal as if it had come from nowhere. My plan had become its own creature, biting at me from the shadows. I hardly slept. My mind reeled. But I didn't stop him. I needed more proof, more clarity. She'd been so distant lately, so uncertain. Maybe this was just the final push, and part of me, the sad, desperate part, hoped she'd turn him down, that she would show him the door the moment he tried to press further. That would have put my suspicions to rest. I wanted that so badly, I nearly prayed for it. But that wasn't how it went. One evening, I was rummaging in my office, sorting documents for an early morning meeting, when I saw a notification blink on her tablet. She'd left it on the living room couch. A message from him. I made a reservation. Same place we had lunch last week. This time dinner's on me. Wear something that'll make me forget my name. My mouth went dry. My heart hammered in my ribs. I slid the tablet open. Read the full thread. She replied with a laughing emoji. Then, "You'd better keep your hands off me if you want me to concentrate on the menu." It was casual. It was playful. There was no second guessing or protest from her. So she'd already had lunch with him. This was the second meeting. My insides twisted. I reminded myself, "You did this. You did this." You wanted to see how far she'd go. Well, here it was. The next few days passed in a haze of tension. My mind fixated on them, and at the same time, I tried to act normal. I kept going to work, making small talk with colleagues, but whenever I thought of them together, my breath got stuck. I felt my jaw clench so hard, I gave myself headaches. Still, I said nothing. I was holding out. For what exactly? Maybe for the final, conclusive sign. It came via Zoom. It was a Saturday, mid-afternoon. She was in the living room, supposedly finishing up a consult for a new interior design client. I was in the kitchen, stacking dishes, half listening to her speak. Then I heard a muffled giggle, something that wasn't professional at all. That was my first red flag. I glanced at my phone, which was synced to her laptop in a weird fluke of our home network. And I saw it. The incoming Zoom request was also mirrored on the kitchen tablet we sometimes used for recipes. Without thinking, I tapped it. A moment later, the screen flickered to life. No one else in the house except me and her. But the images started to stream in. A glimpse of a man's face, dark hair, bright grin. Danny. She wasn't wearing her usual work blouse. She was wearing a strapless top that highlighted her shoulders. And I saw her lean close to the camera, laugh breathily, and say, "Finally, I get to see you properly today." I froze. My vision narrowed. Then his voice, teasing, slow. "I can't wait any longer, Kate. I have to. Let me see you." She tilted the camera down. My stomach lurched. She angled the shot enough that he could see more of her body, and she giggled like a teenager. I heard him murmur something about looking perfect, and I watched her posture shift, letting him admire her from his vantage. It was more intimate than any dinner or lunch could have been. I remember stumbling back a step, nearly knocking a plate off the counter. My mouth went dry, and my heart hammered so loud, I thought I would pass out. But I couldn't tear my eyes away. Then he said, "I'll show you." And I saw him lean back, unbuttoning his shirt. I saw the lines of his torso. He moved closer to his camera. She bit her lower lip. My wife. Biting her lip like that. My mind was screaming, "This is it. This is exactly what you paid for. Are you still proud of yourself?" She reached out, though obviously she couldn't touch him through the screen. Then she laughed in this breathless, high-pitched way. Suddenly, I realized the signal had mirrored onto our big smart screen in the living room. Something about the default settings. She had no idea the feed was also playing in the kitchen tablet, or was accessible from the living room screen. I heard the small beep. She must have pressed something on her end, because the next second, his image was there, full display on our living room TV, which was angled just enough that I could see it from the hallway. He said her name in a low whisper, "Catherine, come here," though he was obviously not in the same room. She arched her back. Then it happened. He pressed his lips to the camera, as if trying to kiss her through the feed, and she responded by leaning in, kissing the screen. It was ridiculous, humiliating, and unbelievably erotic in the worst possible way. Her hand slid across her chest, toying with the top. My entire being felt like it was on fire and drowning in ice, all at once. That's when he told her how badly he wanted her. No illusions, no subtlety left. The explicit words spilled out of him. She gasped, half-laughed. They were oblivious to everything else. For a moment, the connection crackled and the audio echoed. She said, "Wait, I think something." Then the feed stabilized. She shrugged and resumed her half-whisper, "Hurry, show me more," glancing sideways as if worried I might walk in. But she clearly believed I was out, running errands, since I told her earlier I had to go to the grocery store, and I stood there, quietly, like an intruder in my own home. My hands were clenched so tight I thought I'd break my own bones. I tasted blood on my lip. Then, for just an instant, the angle shifted, and I saw her face close up, eyes half-lidded with desire. And at that same second, I saw the ring on her finger. The ring I gave her on our wedding day. I wanted to smash that tablet or kill the feed. But I couldn't move. I had to know exactly how far it would go. It went all the way. In the final frames of that twisted call, I saw him tilt his camera down. He was half-dressed, stepping out of his pants. She moaned something breathy. Then the feed cut out abruptly. The screen turned black. Maybe they lost connection, or she ended it, but the damage was done. I slid down against the wall, breathing like I'd run a marathon. I stayed there, stunned and silent, for I don't know how long. When I got up, I left the house. I walked for hours. I didn't want to face her. My chest was shaking. And yet, ironically, I was the one who orchestrated this fiasco. I had paid for it with my own money. The knowledge felt like poison. Every time I recalled the flicker of her expression, the sound of her voice, I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I couldn't. I just kept walking, ignoring phone calls, ignoring everything. I didn't confront her that night, nor the next day. She seemed a little on edge, maybe suspecting that something was off. But she didn't say anything. I guess she figured it was just my usual stress from work. We spoke in short sentences. I remember her kissing my cheek at one point, so lightly it felt like an afterthought. It took all my willpower not to flinch. 3 days passed. I was inside myself, numb. Then I invited Danny over. I made it sound casual. A thank you for something. I told him it would be just him and me. No big deal. He arrived at my apartment mid-afternoon, wearing a smug expression. He probably thought I was going to hand him the rest of the money. I had a good bottle of whiskey out on the table. He nodded at it and smiled. "Classy," he said. "You want to settle up?" I gestured for him to sit. My voice was calm. Too calm. We need to talk first. He shrugged, sank into the chair, the same confident grin still on his face. I did my part, man. You saw it, right? She's into me, big time. So, the rest of my fee. I held up a hand. No. First, you're going to confess something to her. You're going to tell her it was all your plan, your idea. That I had nothing to do with it. You seduced her because you wanted her. The grin cracked. Wait. What? That wasn't our deal. I took a seat across from him, poured 2 glasses, though I felt no desire to drink. It is now, I said quietly. Listen carefully. You're going to go to her. You're going to say you set her up. You played her. You wanted her from the moment you saw her. Make it convincing. Then you're going to leave town. Do that, and maybe you'll walk away with some money. Refuse, and, well, let's just say I have evidence. Lots of it. Enough to ruin you. He swallowed, then tried to grin again, but it came out weak. Evidence? Come on, man. She's no minor. It's not like it's illegal to have an affair. That's where you're wrong, I said, my voice going soft. I have an old friend in the police force, actually a detective. The Zoom call you so confidently performed. It's documented. We can make a case for coercion, blackmail, and more. You might not do hard time, but it'll sure as hell ruin your life. Are you ready to risk that? He stared at me, as if deciding whether to call my bluff. But I was steady, calm, the way a man gets after too many sleepless nights. Finally, he sighed and looked away. I guess I see where this is going. You get to be the victim, right? You pretend you had no clue. That's the story, I said, picking up the whiskey glass. Take it or leave it. You do this for me, you'll get out with minimal damage. Otherwise. He cut me off with a bitter laugh. All right, man. Fine. I'll do it. You always were the one holding the cards, I guess. Go see her in 1 hour, I said. Tell her everything. Make sure she understands. Break her heart, if you must. Then get out. He stood. I could see the flicker of anger behind his eyes. But he was cornered. He walked to the door. I never should have trusted you, he said in a low voice. I didn't reply. As soon as the door shut, I exhaled. My hands were shaking again. I looked at the whiskey glass, downed it in one gulp. My stomach burned, my mind was numb. I felt no triumph. An hour later, I heard them talking in the living room. I was in the hallway, close enough to catch words but not see their faces. I heard him start haltingly. Catherine, I need to confess something. She sounded tense, uncertain. What's going on? Are you okay? He launched into his prepared story. He told her how he manipulated her, how he targeted her. She gasped, stammered. You're lying. That can't be true. Why would you? Then I heard the tears. She started to cry, confusion lacing her voice. He tried to defend himself, or at least shape the narrative, so he wouldn't look like a complete monster. I did it because I wanted you. You're beautiful, you're so damn creative. I fell for you. I didn't plan for it to get serious, but it did. I messed up. She cried harder, each sob ripping through the apartment. I heard her ask about me. What about Michael? Did he know? Did he suspect something? And I heard him lie. He had no idea. This was all me. I slowly stepped closer to the living room. I could see them now. She was standing, tears streaming down her face, hands trembling. He was a few feet away, head bowed, looking properly ashamed. I said nothing, just watched. After a moment he mumbled an apology, reached out as if to console her, but she recoiled. Get away from me, she said in a choked voice. I don't know what's real anymore. He opened his mouth. No words came. I stood in the doorway, silent, letting the scene unfold. Finally, she noticed me. She turned, her eyes red and swollen. Michael, she whispered. I can't believe this. Her breath caught in her throat. Did you know anything? She looked desperate, wanting me to say something. All I did was step forward, my expression blank. Then I answered quietly, "I'm sorry you're hurting." Her face crumpled. She whispered my name again, but I just stood there, arms limp at my sides. She looked to him, then back to me, as if trying to piece everything together. I saw the moment she realized I wasn't surprised. She opened her mouth, then closed it, confused. But Danny was faster. "I'm sorry," he repeated, his voice trembling with forced regret. "I messed everything up." She covered her face with her hands. "I don't even know who you are." Then, as if something in her snapped, she looked at me, tears running down her cheeks, and said, "Make him leave." "I can't. Please." I stepped aside, gestured toward the door. Danny hesitated, cast one final glance at her. Then he slipped out. The door clicked shut. The apartment was silent except for her ragged breathing. I stayed where I was, near the doorway, watching her. Part of me wanted to hold her. Part of me wanted to scream at her, but instead I stood there like a statue. She was crying, arms crossed protectively over her chest, shoulders shaking. "Michael, please, talk to me," she said in a trembling voice. "Tell me what's going on. You're scaring me." I stared at her for what felt like an eternity. Then I spoke, my voice low, almost monotone. "Did you love him?" She blinked rapidly, shock plain on her face. "No," she whispered. "I know. It was just, I don't even know what it was. Excitement. Attention. I was lonely, It was a mistake. I'm sorry." Her words poured out in a rush, but I just blinked, absorbing them like a stone. My mind was far away, replaying images of that Zoom call, the memory of her biting her lip for him. I stepped closer, and she shrank back slightly, uncertain. I lifted a hand, hovering near her cheek, but didn't touch her. "I'm sorry, too," I said. "I wish things were different." She flinched at the finality in my voice, tears shimmering in her eyes. I saw confusion in her expression, as though she expected me to rage or question, or do something more dramatic. But I had no anger left, just an empty hollowness. She reached for me, but I stepped back. "I need some air," I murmured. I walked out, leaving her sobbing in the living room. My footsteps felt heavy as lead. In the hallway, I paused, leaning against the wall, letting out a long exhale. Then I went out to the stoop, stared at the city street. People passed by. No idea what was happening in my apartment. The day was painfully normal. Cars, chatter, the faint smell of exhaust. It was like the world was mocking me. Inside, I heard her crying, or maybe that was just my mind. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my detective friend. I'd given him the files, the recorded Zoom, everything. He'd told me earlier that this could be framed as a case of forced seduction or some kind of blackmail scenario, thanks to the angle we took. I twisted everything so Danny looked like he'd cornered her into this. My friend had enough connections to push the case if needed. The message read, "Got your update. Evidence is solid. Let me know when to proceed." I stared at it. My heart felt dead. I typed back, "Go ahead. I want a formal process started." I pressed send. Then I slid the phone into my pocket, letting a shaky breath out. This was my final card to play. I'd bury Danny under legal trouble and keep my own image clean. Catherine would see me as someone who'd been played, just as much as she was. If she guessed the truth, well, I was prepared to deny it. But a part of me realized there was no going back to the naive man I'd been. I was changed, and so was our marriage. Eventually, I went back inside. She was in the same spot, her eyes raw and swollen. She looked up at me. Her voice cracked. "Michael, I'm so sorry." I didn't respond. I felt a strange calm. I walked past her, into the kitchen, poured water for myself. I took a sip, not tasting anything. She followed me, hesitant. "Say something," she pleaded. "Yell at me, call me names. Just don't stand there like that." I turned to her. I'm not going to yell, I said quietly. I don't see the point. It's done. She covered her mouth with her hand, stifling another sob. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this. I nodded, though my eyes remained cold. We both made choices, a statement so vague it revealed nothing. She reached out, but I flinched away. I don't know how to fix this, she said, voice trembling. I don't know how we go on. That question hung in the air. I let the silence stretch. It's not about fixing, Kate. It's about living with the consequences. She shut her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. I'll do anything, she whispered. I love you. I almost laughed, but no sound emerged. Instead, I swallowed hard, feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. The memory of that Zoom call was etched into my brain, overshadowing every moment we'd ever shared. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, so strong I had to lean against the counter. Let's just not do this now. I need time. She gave a small nod, tears still streaming, and stood there as I walked away again. I locked myself in the bedroom, sank onto the bed. My reflection in the mirror on the opposite wall looked gaunt, like a ghost. My eyes were bloodshot, my jaw clenched. I'd never felt older. My father had once told me that betrayal ages a man faster than years ever could. I never understood that, not until now. Time passed in a blur after that. She tried to be near me, but I avoided her, letting my phone ring, ignoring messages from colleagues, focusing only on what needed to be done. I didn't threaten her, didn't hurl accusations. My silence was more brutal than any argument could be. Every hour or so, I'd think of Danny, wonder if he'd skip town or try to fight back. But by the end of that day, I got a confirmation text from my detective friend. He's not fighting, surrendering to questioning. He's in trouble. I exhaled slowly. That was that. He was trapped. The narrative was set. Catherine would remain convinced he'd manipulated her. Whatever illusions she had about him were burned. And I was a bystander, the wounded husband. My reputation, ironically, would soar among my peers if the story became public. The man whose wife was targeted by a cunning predator. I was the victim. I was clean. And I hated it, but part of me also savored the twisted victory. Later that night, I didn't speak more than a few words to Catherine. She tried to approach me with trembling lips, searching for comfort, maybe forgiveness. I was blank. I told her I needed space, that I was going to stay in a hotel for a while. She begged me not to leave, tears filling her eyes again. But I shook my head, grabbed a small duffel bag, and walked out. I heard her sob behind me, calling my name as I shut the door. Outside, I felt the chill of the evening air, even though it was late spring. The city lights blinked in the distance, mocking me. I felt raw, hollow, yet also disturbingly calm. My phone vibrated. It was a message from my boss, something about an upcoming meeting. I ignored it. In the darkness, I realized I needed a direction, any direction. So I started walking, the bag slung over my shoulder. A day later, I got a call from her. Her voice was hoarse. She said she was sorry. She said Danny had been arrested, that the police told her about the forced seduction angle, how he'd apparently coerced her. She sounded shell-shocked. She wanted to see me, talk to me. The pity in her voice made me nauseous. She kept saying, "You didn't deserve this. I love you," over and over. I closed my eyes, letting her voice fade into the background. My only reply was, "I'm dealing with it. We'll talk soon." I hung up. I felt no triumph, only a dull ache, like an old injury that'll never fully heal. I was the orchestrator of this fiasco, yet somehow I was the one receiving pity. The irony was bitter in my mouth. Part of me wanted to break down, to confess everything, to scream at her that I'd set it all up. But a bigger part whispered, "No, you keep the high ground. You keep your pride. She chose to betray you. Let her suffer that knowledge. Let her wonder how she could have been so foolish." In the following days, I formally pressed charges against Danny through my detective friend, claiming he had used manipulated video calls, entrapment, and extorted certain emotional responses from Catherine. He didn't fight back. He knew the system well enough to realize he was cornered. They found enough evidence on his phone, my carefully planted messages, the carefully curated conversation logs, everything twisted to appear that he approached her first and threatened to reveal personal details about her. It was ugly, complicated, but the end result was that he was going down for this, his name tarnished, likely losing whatever job or references he had. My friend assured me that the best he could hope for was a plea deal. Meanwhile, Catherine was an emotional wreck. I learned from a mutual acquaintance that she was staying with a friend for a while, or else crying alone in our apartment. That same friend told me she had tried to call me a dozen times, left voicemails, wanting a chance to explain why she had let it go so far. She said she felt unloved, unappreciated, that I was distant. She said a million reasons, but reasons or not, the deed was done. I listened to one of her voicemails late at night in the hotel room where I was camped out. Her voice was shaky, raw. "Michael, please come home. We can fix this. I can't bear the silence. I can't bear losing you. I swear, if you give me one more chance, I'll make it right." There was more, but I stopped listening, pressed delete. I stared at my phone screen, and all I felt was cold emptiness. On the 5th day, I packed my things from the hotel. My heart was calmer, but behind that calm was a deep well of something monstrous. I had become someone I hardly recognized, a man who manipulated events to push his wife into an affair, just so I'd have proof. I saw the reflection of my face in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were shadowed, older. Perhaps I was stronger now, though. I had proof that illusions can burn, that trust is a fragile lie. And I'd survived. I returned to the apartment that evening. The place was silent. She was in the bedroom, lying on the bed, eyes shut. I lingered in the hallway, noticing how she'd left the lights off, as if afraid to see the corners of the place that once was our home. I set my suitcase down with a thump. She stirred, sat up. When she saw me, relief warred with fear in her expression. She brushed her hair back, blinking tears. "Michael," she whispered, "you're here." I nodded. "I am." She wiped her cheeks, stood, but didn't move closer. Can we talk?" I took a breath. "All right." In the living room, we sat on opposite ends of the couch. She was trembling, eyes puffy. She looked smaller, frailer than I'd ever seen her. I'd folded my hands, stared at them. "We can't go back to how we were," I said finally. She nodded, tears slipping free. "I know, I hate myself for what I did." I didn't offer comfort. "Where do we stand?" I asked. "Do you still want a marriage?" She started crying softly. "Of course I do. But how could you ever forgive me?" "I don't know," I said. "And maybe I won't." Her sobs grew, but she tried to compose herself. "I understand if you hate me. If you want a divorce. I get it." Her voice cracked again. "But if there's any chance at all." I watched her, feeling strangely detached. Part of me wanted to lash out, say, "I set you up, and you fell for it." But that wouldn't heal anything. And maybe I liked the new dynamic. Maybe a piece of me wanted her to believe I was the better man. So I said nothing about that. Instead, I reached out and took her hand lightly, not quite a caress. "We'll see what happens next," I murmured. She broke down again, sobbing quietly, pressing her face to our clasped hands as if in silent prayer. I stared at her bent head and felt an odd emptiness. This was the moment I'd once prayed for, proof she was still mine, that she'd repent. But it tasted like ash. In the aftermath of Danny's arrest, the rumors swirled. My name came out surprisingly clean. No one suspected me of hiring him. My detective friend had spun a story that placed me purely as the wronged husband. Catherine might have had private doubts, but she never voiced them out loud. She was too consumed by guilt and fear. I let her meltdown continue. I let her beg for my forgiveness. And slowly, I realized it wasn't just that she had betrayed me. I had betrayed her trust, too, in a more insidious way. But I kept that to myself. In the weeks that followed, we had tense conversations about our future. Sometimes she broke down mid-sentence, apologizing. Other times, she tried to be affectionate, cooking my favorite meal, buying me small gifts, placing notes under my coffee mug. I accepted it all with a distant calm. I said little, stared at her with eyes that felt old. Eventually, she asked, "Are you ever going to talk about it? Yell at me. Show me how you feel." I just shrugged and said, "Not right now." That's when I realized I'd become a man of silence, holding all that rage inside a steel cage. She began to fear it. I think, fear the day it might break loose. But I didn't break. Instead, I carried on, went back to work, acted polite in social gatherings, even told a few colleagues, in a measured tone, about the ordeal with that dangerous man who tried to entrap my wife. They gave me pitying looks, admiring my stoic composure. That's when I felt a small spark of dark satisfaction. My reputation soared, just as I predicted. People murmured that I was so strong, so calm under adversity. If only they knew. One evening, I found Catherine in the kitchen, staring at a single plate on the table. The memory jolted me. It was the same kind of lonely image that had started it all. She touched the rim of the plate and sighed. I entered the room, footsteps echoing. She turned slowly, tears in her eyes. "Michael," she said softly, "do you want to eat something?" I made dinner. I stared at the plate. My mind flashed back to that first morning of panic, the dryness in my throat, the sense of everything unraveling. Now I felt the dryness in my soul. "I'm not hungry," I said. She gave a trembling nod. I could see she wanted to fight for us, but she was terrified of pushing me away. I stepped forward, placed a hand on her shoulder. She looked up, eyes wide. "I know you're sorry," I said quietly, "but I need you to understand. I can't just forget what you did." She swallowed. "I'll do anything." I nodded slowly, took a breath. "Then let me lead. Let me decide how we move forward. No questions." She froze, searching my eyes. Then she whispered, "Okay." She looked relieved, in a twisted way, relieved to have me taking some sort of control. I nodded. My hand slipped from her shoulder. I felt no elation, just a sense of inevitability. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling for hours. My mind replayed the entire chain of events, from the moment I met Danny to the final confrontation. The ghost of that memory flitted through my head, her half-naked, pressing her lips to a screen for another man. My chest tightened, but instead of an emotional outburst, I felt a grim acceptance. It had happened, and I had orchestrated it. Somewhere near dawn, my phone buzzed again. A message from my detective friend, letting me know Danny had officially pleaded guilty to certain charges in exchange for leniency. He'd have a record, a big black mark on his future. He wouldn't see jail time for years, maybe, but he'd definitely serve some, enough to break him. I stared at the message. The final nails in the coffin. The taste of victory was stale. Catherine stirred beside me, reaching out in her sleep for my arm, as though searching for comfort. Her hand brushed my skin, and I lay there, tense. She might have felt my tension, because she sighed and tried to nuzzle closer, half asleep. I let her, eyes fixed on the darkness. My mind drifted to the times we were happy, truly close, before suspicion and bitterness took root. Was that even real? Or was I always suspicious, always waiting for the worst? We kept living together. Day after day, the routine returned, overshadowed by the unspoken knowledge between us. Sometimes she'd pause mid-laugh, remembering what she'd done. Sometimes I'd see her phone light up, and my stomach would twist, a reflex I couldn't control. But the difference now was that she was the one on edge, uncertain if I might snap or vanish. The power dynamic had shifted, and ironically, it made me stand taller, speak more confidently at work, handle negotiations with a sharper mind. That was the twisted gift of betrayal. It hardened me, made me unstoppable in the office. My bosses noticed, praised my newly assertive manner. They joked that I had leveled up. If only they knew the real reason. And the nights carried on, a silent interplay of half-words and forced intimacy. Sometimes I let her get close enough to put her arms around me, her breath hot against my chest. She never brought up the affair or asked if I still loved her. It was as if she was terrified to hear my answer. One night, though, she whispered a trembling question. "Do you still want me?" I closed my eyes. "I'm here," I said. "What else can I say?" She accepted that, though tears glistened in her eyes. I'd like to say the memory faded with time. It didn't. Even as weeks turned to months, every so often, a random moment triggered that image. The way she moaned for him, or the way she described her design ideas in that light, flirty voice. Each time, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. But outwardly, I was calm, stoic. I wore a mask of composure that rarely slipped. And with each day, I realized something crucial. I had become the man who outlived his own illusions. In quiet moments, I sometimes sat alone with a glass of whiskey, letting the burn slide down my throat, thinking about how it all unfolded. If I could turn back time, would I have chosen differently? Would I have just confronted her or tried counseling? Possibly. But this way was final. I had my answer, and I had exacted a form of justice, twisted and cruel, but justice nonetheless. I had raised my reputation in the eyes of those who mattered to me professionally. I was now the steadfast husband, the victim who overcame adversity. People admired me. Some told me they were proud of how I handled it. And Catherine, well, she lived under the shadow of her guilt, uncertain if I'd ever truly forgive her. That was the punishment she chose, maybe unconsciously. Part of me saw her as a broken thing. Another part saw her as a cautionary tale. The second you stray, there's a price to pay. Sometimes that realization gave me a grim sense of power. Other times, it just left me feeling hollow. I'm telling this story like a confession now, not because I regret it, although a piece of me does, but because I still can't believe how it changed me. The day I put that single plate on the table, I was a desperate man, panicking over the possibility that my wife didn't love me anymore. Now, I'm cold. I'm meticulous. I'm a man who discovered that illusions burn fast, and from those ashes, I built a new armor around myself. At the end of it all, there was no dramatic final scene with me throwing her out. Instead, there was a quiet, smoldering aftermath. Danny ended up with a criminal record. My wife stayed, half in tears, half in hope. And me. I stood at the threshold of my own life, looking at the ruins of my illusions. That day, something in me died. A naive trust. But something else was born. A strength. A willingness to do whatever it takes to protect my pride, my reputation, or my future. And that's who I am now. I see her sometimes, late at night, with tear-streaked cheeks. She glances at me, uncertain, her eyes full of questions. I see the regret, the guilt. I say nothing, because I have nothing left to say. She tries to speak, then closes her mouth, silent tears on her face. Maybe she'll stay, maybe she'll leave eventually. The choice is hers, but she knows if she leaves, she'll do so empty-handed. She can't bear that. So she remains, living day by day with the weight of betrayal. In the morning, I go about my routine. I brush my teeth, put on a crisp shirt, head to the office. If she's awake, she gives me a careful smile, hoping for a word of kindness. I might offer a small nod. In the reflection of the bathroom mirror, I catch my own gaze, hard, unyielding. Sometimes I feel like I'm looking at a stranger. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever find peace. But then I remember the hush of that day, the smell of illusions burning, the surge of triumph when Danny realized he was finished. And I think, this is who I am now. This is how I survive. Over a single plate on the table, I lost everything I thought I was. And in losing it, I built something new, something carved out of steel and resentment. Maybe I'm better off for it, maybe not. All I know is that I'm still standing, calm and unafraid, while the embers of my old life smolder beneath my feet. That's enough for me.